The key issue of population aging is the fact that for the first time in human history, a whole continent, not just a country, a whole continent has below replacement fertility. That is, the number of children is not enough, by far not enough, to replace one generation with the next. So at the moment, countries like Germany or Italy or Spain lack about 30 to 40% of people between generations. So the between generations, population declines by 30 to 40%. That is the fundamental fact of the demographic situation in Europe. You know, the situation that we are all getting older is of course true, and it's a thing that is to be applauded, but that's not specific to Europe. That's happening all over the world. We have increase in life expectancy all over the world. It's not something that is unique to Europe. Increasing life expectancy is one factor of population aging, but it's not the only factor. A very important component is the very low fertility, because that reduces the number of young people in the population. And population aging is the balance of age groups. It has nothing to do per se with people getting older. That's just one of the components of population aging. In the history of the human species, my generation, and I virtually mean it, my generation, is the first generation in, I don't know, 10,000 years of human or more of human history that has the opportunity to intentionally decide to have no children or to have very few children. We are the only generation now that has this opportunity. You know, in the past you could use all kinds of natural methods, but in the end you had 2 or 3 children, more or less automatically. We are the first generation who has to make a conscious decision that we want to have children. So that's absolutely new. And we have to learn what it means to make the decision to have children or not to have children. So this situation is really something where we don't have historical experience. This is really new. And we don't know what decisions will be taken by people in 20, 30, 40, 50 years. They might actually come back to thinking about that, you know, children are really part of your life. It's satisfying to have children. And actually, to give you a little bit background of our projection methodology, to project the low fertility countries, the countries with below replacement fertility, is the greatest challenge for us, by far, because no one knows how the fertility will change. You know, it could maybe remain very low at 1.4 children or 1.6 children or whatever, but it could also go up. There is no reason to believe that people cannot change their mind. It could go up to maybe 2 children and so on. It's much easier to project the decline of fertility in countries which have 5 or 6 children, because as soon as they have economic development, as soon as they have all the access to modern contraceptives, as soon as people are getting information about, you know, advantages of bringing their children into schools, they will have less children. That's a very common phenomenon all over the world. I think there is a positive twist. We should not be too impatient. You know, as I said before, we are the first generation essentially who has this particular option to make a choice, a conscious choice about the number of our children. And well, maybe we were overshooting. We were, you know, maybe a little too eager to say, well, I want to have a career, and I want travel, and when you're 40 or 50, you start thinking, oh, maybe it was not such a good idea. Maybe I was, a bit too selfish. Maybe it's a nice thing to pass on the money you have, or your property, or your knowledge, or whatever, to the next generation. So it could very well be that the next generation thinks quite differently, or at least some of the people think quite differently. And I could very well imagine that maybe in 2 or 3 generations, people will realize that having children is just a natural thing for a human being to have. We want to live on, and people will start to think that this is something natural.